share. Okay. Marie. There's people that were there. They might want to join in or something. So last week I went to New York City. Is that going to fall? I don't know. It might fall. I hope not. Oh, I got to fix this. All right. It's hot in here. Hold on a minute. I'm going to open the window. It's very hot. Yeah. So I went to New York City last week for... Because my stuff, although I'm now living in Connecticut, my stuff all happened in New York, Long Island. And I've had dreams of being able to speak to legislators and tell them all of the corruption and stuff that's going on. I mean, this is before I even knew about a movement. I had literally had dreams of sitting in Congress telling a whole room full of people what happened to me to make change. It was almost foreshadowed that I get involved, but I had no idea that there was a movement at the time. Because I went through everything alone. I had no Facebook groups or nothing. And they existed. I just didn't know. I didn't have all the access. So anyway, I went to this New York State Assembly in New York City downtown. Right around the corner from the Ground Zero. They had a public hearing, the rights of children in court. It sounds so UN to me when they say the rights of children. I mean, children have rights, but parents have rights too. And the UN is the whole thing that started this. Let's not even get into the history of the UN. But anyway, they only had... Earlier in the week, you may have seen my video, and I'm not going to get into details, but I called up because they have an application for people to speak for 5 minutes, and you can hand in your testimony as well. And you were supposed to make so many copies, but it was by invite only to speak, so that makes no sense how they would have an application for everybody and then not have everybody speak. So, I mean... When I spoke to the woman, she's like, well, we would be here for weeks and weeks with hundreds and hundreds of parents from across the state. So what do they do instead? They have 5 witnesses with only 1 parent. They each got more than 5 minutes because they can be flexible. And they only did it in 2 hours. 2 hours and... What, 2 hours? I wrote it down. I was like, oh my God, it's over? Anyway, yeah, it was like 2 hours and a few minutes. That's it. So, and the one parent, she was an excellent parent, but they didn't hit on the subjects that are, I mean, they hit on one subject. There's so many different facets. But let me tell you, the people that were sitting there was Andrew Hevesy. He was the one in the control. He's, I think they were all Democrats. Andrew Hevesy is Committee on Chair of Social Services. I know, I'm sorry. He wasn't the one in charge. Jeffrey Dinowitz was the one in charge. He sat in the center, although they each represented, though, separate committees from the Assembly. So Jeffrey Dinowitz was the chair of the Judiciary Committee. Andrew Hevesy was the chair of the Committee of Social Services. And Ellen Jaffe is the chair on the Committee of Children and Families. I don't remember if she was an attorney or not. I think she may have a history with education. I'm not sure. I have to look her up. Ellen Jaffe, Jaffee. I thought she was very nice. And I thought she asked, pointed questions, okay. And they think they all ask genuine questions, but I also know that they skirted a lot. they are career politicians, let's not forget. None of this is new to them. They sit around talking about how are we going to make the courts better, but nothing is new to these people. They know the system. They know how it works. So, like I said, the ringleader was Jeffrey Dinowitz. And what really made a statement to me was when one of the witnesses said something trumps something. He said, "Don't use that word, the word Trump, because it reflected, in his mind, President Trump," which you would think that this is a nonpartisan issue with the children, that they wouldn't bring politics like parties into this. This is why I said they're all Democrats on the panel here. The people sitting behind them were representatives of other Congress people, representatives or assemblymen, whatever. They were young, they were all interns, and they genuinely want change and they genuinely see problems, but they don't know the bigger picture because they're young and they're interns. And so talking to them and thinking that you're going to make a change, they're all on fire about it, but they don't have a clue because they're interns. These are career politicians we're talking about. We're talking about career judges. They know what's going on. They're career judges. They don't get voted out. Just saying. And now they want to merge them all so they could move them around more easily. Sounds like the Catholic Church to me with the pedophiles. They can move them around so they can cover things. They can cover their tracks. That's why they want to move judges around. It's not because they don't have enough or they get bored where they are or no, it's to cover their tracks. That's why they do it. All right, ways to improve. All right, so the chair says he wants ways to improve the court system. This is his intro. Okay, I'm going over what happened. I have a few pages here, a number of pages, but I'll get through it quickly if I stop talking in between. Okay, so he wants ways to improve the court system. He wants to solicit feedback. Well, what kind of feedback? They don't want to hear the parents give their testimonies verbally. My issue is, I could write it down, but that doesn't mean you're going to read it. If I speak it and you're listening, then I know it's being heard. That's my right to be heard. That's my issue. Whether they do anything about it or not is another thing. But the fact is, they're not even allowing us to be heard because they go to Deep Six and file all of our complaints. You think they're going to read them? I don't think so. He says protecting the child is to the greatest extent that they can. Well, in child custody. Oh no, it's greatest extent that they can. Well, of course we want to protect our children, and that's beyond the that's even more important, of course, than the best interest of the child. Protecting the child, of course, we know that. But that is then where it gets kind of gray, okay? Because now most of the meeting didn't talk about CPS. Most of the meeting talked about domestic violence. And it was very much a Me Too conference. But I'll get into it. I'll talk about my feelings on this. Okay, so first they had Robin Lynch. And she was a psychologist, the chair of the New York State Psychology Association Child Custody Evaluation Committee. I thought she was pretty excellent. But there was a disclosure that Jeffrey Dinowitz, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, is her neighbor. And they disclosed that, full disclosure, and they made a joke about it. But I actually thought she was pretty good. But the whole thing I'll get to. I'll say what she said and then I'll get to what I have to say about it. Okay, so she said that there's a lack of training, standards, and oversight resulting in harm to children with the psychological evaluations. And she said it's very polarized because of divorce cases and custody vows. She said nothing about CPS. custody of, well, she basically talked about divorce, but not custody with CPS. I guess there's always two parents. Maybe I'm speaking from a different perspective, because my custody case was me against the county, because I'm a single parent. There was no father involved. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I don't have the muddy other parents argument. I don't have that. That was in the past with my first divorce. My second child was just me against the state. So I don't have all of that muddy divorce stuff in my fight. My fight was against the state, the county. So I have different perspective. I've seen things that shouldn't have happened because, and I can't accuse my ex-husband. It was the county. So that's where I come from. Okay. So evals need to be standardized and training. Of course they do, but they're not. And that I agree with. There's nothing standard about how they do it. They actually did for me a neuropsych to find out and they did a IQ test. They did IQ testing for me. But that has nothing to do with my ability to raise my child. And so then I presented to them old IQ testing that I had from a neuropsych that I had like 5-6 years ago, or, well, it was a couple years before that this psychologist tested me. And then she writes in her report, well, it's unusual. And then I gave it to her. It's unusual that she didn't say anything about this when she took the test. I said, why would I say that I've taken the test before? Why would I make that kind of a comment before? Like, she didn't pay attention to my comments that I was in a lot of pain during the test, which you might think it might alter the test scores because I was very uncomfortable and a lot of pain. You know, she tweaks. They always take something and they'll use it against you. If you're looking for a second opinion, they'll either say you're doctor shopping, or you have Munchausen's, or something like that, instead of saying, well, you're a concerned parent and you're getting a second opinion before you have that surgery on that child. So they will take anything and twist it and turn it against you if they have an agenda. Okay. Not uniform. In other words, she said they're not, no, the testing is not uniform, and that's the truth. And there are bad evaluators, and there are probably better evaluators. Are they all good? I don't know. Not as long as, are any of them good? I don't know. I haven't seen any that I know that are good. I dated one, and he gave them what they wanted. I remember that. It was when I started getting sick. He used to write a report, and he would give them what they wanted. I thought it was terrible. One of the reasons why I broke up with him. Misabuse can rely. Misabuse. They misabuse. I wish I could read my handwriting here. Okay. Oh, misabuse of these evaluations can result in dead children. And then she has a term called affect dysregulated individual. Is a person who has experienced trauma, abuse, and addiction, often a parent in a high conflict custody, has an affect dysregulated individual due to trauma, abuse, and addiction, and it has a high correlation with the custody conflict, and that the children's lives are at stake. With that, I believe that's true. The evaluators in New York State do not require training. She was asked, how do they choose an evaluator? And she said in the past they did a lottery once, but she didn't really answer to what they're doing now. She said that only 5 to 10% are so polarized and contentious that the evaluator is called in. Only 5 to 10% of the divorce cases have a forensic or a psychological evaluator, forensic evaluator, a custody evaluator. I don't know what they call it, but forensic psychological report, I suppose, right? But parents will pay for it unless they are indigent. And that sets up a bias to who can and can't pay. Now, I don't understand the dynamics of that with the money. I had to pay for it when I was going through my divorce. I was working, and then I didn't pay for it when a county went against me years later with my younger son because I was indigent. But regardless, the evaluator in my second case was chosen by the judge. And the first case was a colleague of my ex-father-in-law who was a psychologist, taught at St. John's. And he swore in a letter that I don't even remember if it was an affidavit that he had it signed or notarized, but he swore that there would be no conflict of interest because he's a professional. So that excludes him of bias because he's professional. But it took him 4 hours to read my ex-husband's slander, which was a book like this against me. I read the first chapter of what he was writing about me, and then his rewrites. He kept editing it. You don't edit a journal. A journal is an ongoing log, but he was writing it like a story. And it took 4 hours. I had to pay for this psychologist to read what my ex-husband wrote about me. That's insane. And then that was admissible in court, which he says things about my father-in-law saying things about me. So that gives credibility and validity to my ex-husband because my father-in-law said he was friends with the psychologist. That's crazy. It's insane. So that should not have been allowed. That should not have been allowable at all. So anyway, then... Okay, so how to identify the trauma then? She said trauma takes on more dimensions in the divorce. That they need to tweak it out, that the child is going to one parent or the other. And then there's a list of qualified evaluators, but how do we determine the qualification? Evaluators can see them in any which way that they want. Together, apart, with the kids, and that the discrepancies need to be analyzed. Psych testing, there's too many problems inherent in it, like the MMI. Misleading results, which the party has the greatest capacity to put the child's interests first. With the psych testing, the results are not reliable and parents are under duress. You see, like I said, when I was tested, I was under duress from the situation. I was also in a lot of pain. I had severe pelvic pain. I had a crushed pelvis, which they were denying. And they did not acknowledge. She did not acknowledge I couldn't sit. I was in so much pain. And through my court case, my whole trial, I was in pain. And they denied me, but it was in the medical records that they subpoenaed, which I wasn't told about, and then I found them in the subpoenaed medical records, that I did have, in fact, a crushed pelvis, which they denied that I had in the courtroom. Results are not reliable. Parents are under duress. Judges sometimes rely on the evaluator to choose. Well, later on, one of the witnesses said, yes, they always rely on the evaluator to choose. Okay, so without exception, the judge follows a recommendation of a person who is untrained, who has too much power. Peer review does not exist. And in New York, evaluators do not need to be a psychologist, but they can also be a social worker and a psychiatrist. So, all right. The issue. Okay. So then we had Eileen, and so I thought that the psychologist was very good. Despite her being a neighbor of the assemblyman, I thought she was good. I'm speaking about that issue alone. Okay, so the Eileen Stack was the next witness. Eileen Stack is a deputy commissioner of the Child Support Services, New York State Office of Temporary Disability Assistance. Okay, and she said about nearly 800,000 children in the system collect child support. They collect child support for in New York State. Child support is an anti-poverty system. When they say anti-poverty system, that to me is a red flag and rings bells. Not to mention, there was no mention of Title 4D money. They never said the words Title 4. They never said what the federal funding was. Unclaimed funds. Child support. She was talked a lot about the unclaimed funds. Unclaimed funds for child support payments. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're losing the recipients of the money for child support? I think that that's what she was talking about. Like they have this big pool of money of unclaimed funds. Is that an excuse for something, for having so much money in their coffers that they're not telling people about, that they're collecting from the federal government? I have no idea why they would have so many unclaimed funds. If a person is late with their child support checks, don't you think that that other parent is chasing them down looking for it? Why would there be unclaimed funds? That to me doesn't make sense. And she spoke a lot about this. So I don't understand why that's a problem. I mean, it is a problem, but it doesn't make sense to me. We have money to give away. Where is the money? We collected it, now we have to give it. So who's going to get it? Like, why can't we find those kids? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. And she said it predates the technology in New York, goes back to the 1970s. Other states, including California, Florida, Illinois, Texas, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, all use more what do you call it, modern. So in other words, New York doesn't have their computers in order. They probably like having money in their coffers. They're making interest on it. You know that. Administrative process outside of the UK. The other states use administrative processes that are outside of the judicial process. So they've made it a business. Administrative. When I hear administrative, I think incorporated, I think privatized, I think, like that, bureaucratic. Not all families reach their money. This is okay. That I just said that already. Okay, looking at independent. Oh, here. Then she says they're looking at independent contractors to get them to report people who are working for them, so that they can collect from them. You own a business, you're an independent contractor, that if you have somebody employed for you, that you would that you would get their child information so that they can pay their child support payments. Something like that. I guess they're not collecting enough either. I don't know. She's talking all about how they do the money and the urgencies that they have with the money. I don't know. Every 2 years they talked about the driver's license, and I don't know how they understand. She says it's a very effective tool to remove a driver's license from a parent who isn't paying their child support, which makes no sense. How are they supposed to work without a car? Trying to discourage deadbeat dads. I think they're trying to create poverty. If you're taking a driver's license away from a person who cannot make their payments, then you are limiting their ability to find a job. So they're making sure a good order is in place from the beginning. So they're going to try to make sure that a child support arrangement is a good one from the very... I got this hair hanging in my face. It's annoying me. Okay. So they talked about crossing state lines and collections. There was no mention of Title 4D. Hevesi, who is the he's the social services committee chairperson. He asked very good questions, but again, everything is skirting. He asked, do you have sufficient funding? This is where I think this was a setup. This witness was his witness. Because then he asked this question. Do you have any sufficient funding? Do you have sufficient funding to carry out your mission? Is this a budget issue to help in your mission? So when you're asking questions like that, I have serious concerns. And the answer was certainly, we would love to have more resources and more money, all of us in every aspect of government. But I think, again, I think we can work with, I think we continue to work, we do have some generous federal funding. That's the only implication to Title IV-D funding that she made, as well as in the program. I'd love to get back to you on that. And then Hevesy, the judicial guy, said, what kind of federal funds you getting? A pass-through, and then he said something. And it wasn't, he didn't say Title IV either. And then she said, well, there's some contribution for expenditures that are reimbursed by the federal government. That is qualifying child support services and activities are reimbursable by the federal government, about 66%. So she was hesitating, and she was very careful of her words. I think they were talking about Title IV, but she wouldn't say it. And then she said they're reimbursed 66% for their expenditures. So I wonder how much for every pen and pencil that they put into their, expenditures, that they get reimbursed, almost like you're putting in for your taxes and you're writing off things. Maybe that's how they do it. I don't know how it all, I'm not an expert on Title IV-D, how that all works. But I can tell you that it's a game, because they're talking about it right in front of us. So you can listen to the, let me finish with her. I'm almost done with her. Do you come, okay, then Ellen, the special ed, the education committee person, Children and Families, Committee on Children and Families, she asked, how do you come to provide support for disability? Is there a way to supply this support? And then the answer was, Eileen's answer was, the court magistrate has ways to consider for that and educational expenses. So basically the court decides whether or not, I guess, the child is special needs, where they get extra money, whatnot. So anyway, and in my case, they tried to deny that my son had special needs, and I don't know why, because he has an IEP. He had an IEP. They denied it in front of me, and then I have recordings and transcripts, not recordings, I have transcripts of them meeting ex parte, talking about my son and his friend, which is completely off. It's supposed to be off the record, but it's on the record. They're talking about my son's friend being on the spectrum, who was never even diagnosed. But that came from social services, who spoke to my sister, who thinks she knows everything. Crazy. Well, yes, my son's friend probably was on the spectrum, but he was never officially diagnosed. Isn't that crazy? That's in the transcripts. I have the transcripts. It's crazy. So so this Eileen Stack person was talking all about money and how they collect and what they have in their coffers and what they don't have in their coffers, and it was kind of crazy. And so if you want to listen to the actual recording, I will be posting what I recorded, reposting all together, because they were 3 videos. Donald Crawford was there. Oh, let me tell you the people who were there with me that I knew. Robert Griesbach, Grease Besland, he's with the Father's Rights in New York. James Kelly, Marie Tooker, and her son. Her son's really adorable. And Donald Caulfield. And I don't know the other people. There were a lot of parents there. And there were also a lot of people on the other side, the domestic violent people, which I don't have a problem with domestic violence and that argument. I have a problem with where I'm going with this. Okay, but these people were there, and so Donald had a live video. I'm going to combine his with my two and make one long video of the whole, because I went out to the New York State Assembly.gov, NYAssembly.gov, not NY.gov, because you'll never find the videos. But if you go to NYAssembly.gov, you will find the video of this. However, it booted me out after like 30 minutes, and then it booted me out again after another 10 minutes, and then again, and it wouldn't let me on anymore. It says, speak to your administrator. I'm like, who's speaking? They block me out. They lock me out. And I think there's a cookie that they put in there that you can't analyze. You can't be watching these videos. There's something. Maybe it's just me, but they won't let me finish watching the video. I went on my cell phone, the same thing. It wouldn't let me on. It had the same alert on it. So I'm like, wow. So a good thing I have the live videos, because I was able to re-listen. Anytime you want to, the thing is this, I didn't want to go on with this to be able to, I didn't want to go right away to review what I had seen in New York that day, because I was reacting. I wanted to watch it again so I could think about what I had seen and re-listen to the details so I can more accurately describe what happened. After any kind of a debate or anything, people get on there and they talk about what they think, and but they heard it just once. They're only reacting. They didn't have time to sit back and think and analyze. That comes days later. So, okay. The next witness was Jacqueline Franchetti. And Jacqueline Franchetti she was from the Kira Franchetti Foundation. And she was the mom. Her story is horrific. In July 2016, her daughter was murdered, shot twice. Then the father burned his house and committed suicide, burning him in the body. But they found that her daughter was suicided. Was killed, murdered. And every courthouse this is happening. Watch. She didn't say what was happening in every courthouse, but okay. So dad was suicidal. Everybody knew. CPS came, and in their report they said he is full of anger, rage issues, hostility, and threatening in front of Kira, which is the daughter's name. That there was no domestic violence, but they concluded after all of this that there was no domestic violence. Well, if you're threatening in front of a child and there's hostility and rage issues, don't you think that there's domestic violence or capacity for it or propensity for it or a threat of the future of it happening? I do believe there is, especially if it's a contentious divorce. The forensic evaluator, Larry Cohen, he never did a psychological test on him, despite knowing that he was suicidal, and it was documented in the evidence. Witnesses, the red flags. The evaluator believed that the dad should play a role in the child's life. Signs of showing toddler distress. Now, I don't know what toddler distress is. That's another coin phrase. I don't know what it's, some kind of PTSD, perhaps. I don't know. I've never heard it before as a term, but I'm sure the domestic violence community knows what that means. Because I don't know. I don't know domestic violence myself, thank God. Aside from a narcissistic ex-husband. There were 14 children killed in New York by their parents in the last 2 years. That's called filicide, and James Kelly knows a lot about filicide. He knows a lot of stats and studies and stuff like that. So she was asking for proper training of all the court players, of the judges, of the psychologists and CPS people who are ridiculous. They don't investigate. That she also wanted to put the child's safety first before the best interests of the child mandates. And which also we're not, you see, but we're not in disagreement with that, because we say that children should have both parents of willing, fit, and able parents. If they're unfit, unwilling, or unable, that's a whole different story now, isn't it? So that we're not saying different things, we're saying the same thing. But the courts aren't doing a good job at determining what that is, and there's a reason for that, and we'll get to that. The best research on trauma, she wants the gold standard on research to be used, the ACE study, which we talk about all the time, which is the adverse childhood events and how that affects children, and it shortens their life even. With adverse childhood events, how it can even shorten their lives. That study needs to be used in determining, I guess, with what kind of what is an adverse childhood event. The United Judges Association says 70% of abusers are gaining custody. I have a problem with that. I don't think it's 70% of abusers are gaining custody. And I say that because the United Judges Association, why would they make themselves look so bad? There's a secondary motive in saying that. I don't know how real it is, and how are they determining that statistic? What kind of research is it? You see, I studied research, development, and design when I was in graduate school. And to me, I question a lot of these studies that come out from a lot of these groups. You know, when I hear the FBI say, yeah, 90% of the kids that are found in child trafficking are connected to the foster care system, I believe that. But I don't believe that 70% of abusers are gaining custody. I do know a lot of them are, but I don't think 70% are. I just don't know where they got that number from. I don't know. Maybe it's 56. I don't know. I don't know. It just, to me, it just seems, why would the United Judges Association be doing a survey like this? They usually want to keep their hands off of anything that looks bad on them. So there's a motive behind it. And we got to think about, well, what would that motive be? And so my thinking is, well, they're going to be blaming the psychologists because they always play monkey in the middle when something goes wrong. They always have multiple parties involved so that they can have the blame game. I'll give you an example. When I go to the doctor and I say, what does this x-ray show? And the doctor will say, well, I don't know what that x-ray shows. I'm not a radiologist. So then I go to the radiologist and I say to the radiologist, what's going on here? And the radiologist will say, oh, I'm not a clinician. I can't tell you why you're having pain there. Ask your doctor. So they play the blame game. They play monkey in the middle. And that's how they defer responsibility. You get the runarounds. That's what that is. It's the runaround. So this figure of 70% of the abusers are gaining custody. I don't know where they get that figure from and why they would acknowledge that from the United Judges Association. I don't know the motive behind it because I don't think it's a real number. Although I don't doubt that I know for a fact that many abusers do gain custody. And there's another group behind it that's probably doing this, and that's CPS. 58,000 kids a year are sent to abusers' homes are sexually, emotionally, and physically abused. 711 of them are murdered since 2018 by mom and dad. Well, that's really a big number for 1 year. When she said, and I guess that's across the country, when she said that 14 kids only were killed in New York State, which New York has a large population. So I'm not sure where all these numbers are coming from. The figures aren't accurate. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Filicide does happen, but these numbers aren't accurate because it doesn't make sense to me. I would think that either New York has more murders or that the national in 3 years. So 14 kids in 3 years in New York, but 711 nationally in the past year. It does not make sense to me. There's something wrong with the numbers. That's what I'm saying. There's something wrong with the numbers. So if you're going to use any kind of figures or any kind of research, which the Father's Rights does a lot, and so does domestic violence people, they use to try to bolster and support their arguments. I like to know where the numbers are coming from, because I understand statistics. I understand evaluative measures. I understand research design. And I question the validity of a lot of these and the reliability of a lot of these figures. And I'm not doubting that these things don't happen, but I don't know how they generate these figures either. I don't know where they're getting their resources from, and obviously who is the one who's sponsoring it. They're going to be biased because they haven't done anything scientific. I mean, I'm not seeing numbers generated in a way that, I mean, they don't make sense to me. They're not reliable. Okay. Failing system, she says, abusers' rights are a priority, not for the children. And Dinowitz says, why? And the mom says, the system is set up that way. She was right. The system is set up that way. And then he skirts it. He doesn't say anything. Then he goes, what type of training? He goes right back to the training, which we left that subject. He brings it back when she says the system is set up that way. She even says the judge, that's next. Okay. So then she said, well, the judges are not well trained at all. Well, first of all, mom is missing the boat here. Judges don't have training because judges are career judges. They know the game. They've been in it. They see hundreds of cases. I would think that their feet get wet as soon as they step into that courtroom. And they're attorneys most of the time to begin with. So anyway, so they're not well trained. I doubt that that's the case. So then she said, a judge came up to her and said, well, you're young, you can have another child, because her child was killed. Unfortunately, she did got into another relationship, and she has another child. But that's not the point. They're masters at trying to shovel themselves out, right? A little of the Me Too movement I felt in that room. But I'm a Me Too because my child was murdered also. So by doctors, not by an ex-spouse, not by another man. So my Me Too is, it's with the court system screwing with us and protecting abusers. Yes, the doctors in my case were protected by the court. Dinowitz, the safety of the child should be higher than the best interests of the child. Well, that's true. It's not happening. The child is treated like a timeshare in Boca. That's what the mom said. Okay. So she has money. She lives in a nice area. So she would have timeshare in Boca, I suppose. Study from the George Washington University. A little of the Me Too movement in family court. I don't know why. That's what she wrote. She said that even. And I think that they kind of took her under their wing. We don't want to believe that abuse happens. And she said all judges should set this all judges should get this proposal. The Chief Justice of New York, restructure and merge the court systems where the judges can be transferred more easily from one court to another. Well, why would they be doing that? Like I said, well, why does the Catholic Church move priests around? Think about that one. Specific training is needed, especially with the family court judges. Mom says they need more training. Again, it's not training. It's corruption. And it's money. And it's all about the coffers. The Connecticut bar used a fired judge. And I witnessed this. I was right there at the hearings. And then I was right there when she did this. The Connecticut Bar Association used a fired judge. The only one in the state's history. She wasn't fired because you can't fire a judge. You can't vote them out. But what they did was they let her term run out. Because they asked her to step down and she refused. They let her term run out. And then she took on a job in another law firm with some other assembly person. Connecticut Bar Association asked her to do a continued ed seminar for other attorneys for teaching ethics on how to handle pro se litigants. I was there to rally against that. I was picketing outside of that seminar. I was there when they were reaming her up and down in the assembly. And the Bar Association has her teaching other lawyers how to handle pro se litigants ethically, when she was the most unethical judge on the planet. Well, there's so many of them, but she was the only one in Connecticut that we got off. So go figure, right? Like they don't know the game. So they need training? No, they're evil. We need term limits. Just like the legislator needs term limits, but they always get re-voted in. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of corruption and stuff in the election, a lot of cheating and a lot of, fraud in voting in the elections. That we have selections. We don't have elections. Why do people keep getting voted back in? Why are there incumbents all the time? They make it careers. And in fact, I went to the Rule of Law conference with the Bar Association. There was all judges and administrative people there in Connecticut. And they said being a judge is a career. Like they expect that they're going to be there for the rest of their life. They're lifers. So you're in the club. It's a club. The judges have no incentive to do well, to do the right thing. In fact, some of them might even get a rise out of the power and control that they have. And I know that they do. They do. It's a fact that they do. They know how much power they have over people's lives. They have no oversight. They have no accountability. The appellate courts and superior courts support them. Even when it comes to constitutional law, they support them. I mean, all of it's unconstitutional what they do. It's unlawful because it's what they're playing is legal with contracts and legalese, and they're a private corporation. They're all working under their own contracts and the bar. They're not beholden to us, we the people. They're beholden to their community, to the people who give them the check. We pay, but they're the ones who keep them in power. And if they don't do what they're told to do, then they're out. So they were So they're blaming they're blaming training of the judges, and they're blaming the evaluators, and not the judges themselves. I'm almost done. Okay, Hevesy is a believer of Hevesy, the Social Services Committee chair, was believer of toxic stress and cortisol levels. He's an ACE advocate, which that's good, because how can you deny that, right? CPS has poor investigations, and that is true. He does admit that. He's the chair of Social Services, and he admits that CPS's poor investigations. And Ellen, the chair of the education committee, the Family and Children Committee, was shocked that CPS didn't recognize the father's, being abusive. But I'm shocked that she's shocked. But then she did again mention the ACE study also. Okay, so the mom said our family court system is upside down and backwards and not protecting our children. It is protecting the abuser. It needs to change, and the children placed in harm's way. And that is true. And God bless this mom. I feel bad for her. Her child is beautiful. And it's really, really sad what happened. But again, it happens to other people. My case is different, but it happened to me. I lost a child. Nancy Erickson, Esquire. She's a loser. I did not like her. She was an attorney who is completely anti-shared parenting. They did play with her a little bit at the end, which I thought was a little bit redeeming of the committee, because she was so biased and one-sided. It was obvious that, she's a CPS worker, I think she said, she got her master's in forensic psychology. Now here they're saying there is no training for psychology, but how did she get a master's in forensic psychology? I guess that to better understand custody. I don't know how that overlaps. Forensic could be criminal too, I guess. Not just, I don't know how it works with, but anyway, she's totally against 50-50 parenting due to domestic violence. Well, again, it's not conflict when you finish the sentence and say 50-50 shared parenting for able, fit, and willing parents. You have to finish the sentence. She said it's a theory of parental alienation needs to be taught. She calls it a theory. She says that the presumption against custody to an abuser, I don't know. I don't understand what she was saying. And then Hevesy said the best interest of a child, other considerations make me cautious. It's very dangerous. 50-50 lobby. She said that 50-50 lobbyists are bullies and it's junk science. It's ridiculous and unscientific theory. She said friendly parent custody factor. I don't know what she was talking, or she was talking bullshit as far as I was concerned. So what I did was I was going like this and like this, and up like this in the air, and up like thumbs up, thumbs down for things, and then I held this up so that they can all read it. FOS, if you can't read backwards, so that the committee saw it, and I was like this, and then they told me to put it down. I was like this, and I was like this, so I couldn't see them, So Dinowitz said, please don't use that word Trump when she used the word Trump. Something. And I didn't like that. Too many personal opinions by this lawyer. Everything was personal opinion. My opinion and my opinion, like she's the expert, like she's the authority, I should say. Dinowitz said, let's start to wrap up, because she was just meandering and going on and on and on. And then she's like, well, I have one more page. And then she gives only one side. She mentions Europe, and she only gives one side of what's going on in Europe. But she didn't talk about all the other positive sides going on in Europe with 50-50 parenting. And a lot of the domestic violence or the violence that's happening in Europe is also happening because of their immigration problems, but she totally didn't even touch. Calls the father's rights lobbyists the supremacy. She calls the father's rights lobbyists supremacy lobbyists. I thought that was quite offensive, and so did the other men sitting there, because my ex-husband, he was an asshole. He had father's rights movement attorney. He was disbarred with him. He paid a lot of money for his father's rights attorney. He was a liar. He was a bastard. He was nasty. But and my ex-husband was a bit of a narcissist, and he wasn't, you know, he wasn't much of a husband to me. But to call him a supremacist, I don't think so. I don't think so. All right, award sole custody to she wants to award sole custody to the victims. Well, yeah, I would think so if you want to protect the child. Myth that women often lie is junk science. But I think that maybe more often women don't lie, but many do lie. So you have to work that out. It's the same as men. They lie that they don't abuse because they're narcissistic. They're great manipulators and players. They know how to love bomb, so they make people love them, and then they pull their tricks out. So it's all very deliberate. That's how abuses work. And that's why it's tricky to evaluate them. And then, so Hevesy asked her about reasonable standards, why parents are going to want to protect their child. And CPS in many areas believes is parental alienation garbage and have them taken children away and give them to abusers. Oh, so they think because CPS is being benevolent by giving the abuser parental, they're benevolent by saying, oh, parental alienation, so we have to share this child with the abuser. No, they often take the child from the fighting parent, the good parent, give to the abuser. So that way they generate more business with CPS, because after a while, that child's going to get abused. Child's going to end up in foster care then, because mom can't get that child back. And once the child's in foster care, now you have an abused child in foster care. And they can continue to abuse this child. It becomes a business. Everything she said was feels, and she sympathizes and she synthesizes. She sympathizes, but she synthesizes with the judges. We need more judges and courtrooms. I'm saying we need to get rid of them. We need criminal courts to do their job. We are penny pinching with some of the most important people in the state. And Hevesy said, no argument there. He's the Commission on Judicial Committee. Evaluators are supposed to collect info for the judges. Custody investigator instead of an evaluator. Well, that would be nice, but they don't investigate. You know, I agree they should properly investigate. They don't investigate. They're not looking to exonerate parents. They're looking to accuse parents. So also says, let the judge take the mediator's role. She also says to the judge to be the mediator. Well, the judge's role is not to be a mediator. Then, okay, so I was happy when she finally got off the court stand. And again, I held up my sign, full of shit, FOS, FOS, you know. We have to get more active boots on the ground. We have to go to these things. And we have to make noise. I was going to pick it outside, but I wanted to see what they were going to do inside, who was inside. Only 5 people on the list. 1 parent. Another lawyer, second lawyer, who comes up on the stand. She talked, and I thought it was pretty good. All right, I'm almost done. I got 1 page left. She said the best interest standard. Many judges have no experience in matrimonial law, which I thought was bullshit. Because yes, they do. They see hundreds and hundreds of people and they're career judges. They don't leave that stand. They do the same thing day in and day out. They know their business. They know their craft. And they've done matrimonial law before they took the stand. So I thought that was bullshit. She said they were inherent that the psychological evals done by highly qualified people using a specific methodology. There's no requirement upon which the evaluators base their recommendation. And so so she's talking on both sides of her mouth, because they rely on that these evaluations be done by such qualified forensic evaluators or whatever, custody evaluators, whatever you want to call them. But then there's no specific methodology or requirements to how they base their recommendations. So she's saying that she recommends that evals be done early when the abuse is alleged, that there be training in trauma responses of a child. She's also saying that only the most contentious cases are getting forensic evals. Again, they said only 5 to 10% of the divorce cases are getting a forensic evaluation. I think it's higher than that. And then supervised visitations programs, there's a resource problem, lacking services. So she wants more supervised visitations. For abuser, now, you know what? I take back that I said I thought she was good. She sounded good, but then she didn't sound good. When a litigant asks a judge for time to obtain an attorney, the judge grants it. That's not true. I was forced to take the stand without an attorney when I was asking for an attorney, so that's not true. It happened with my ex-husband, and we were in trial we had to have trial for our divorce, and they forced me to take the stand without any preparation, without an attorney. Okay, so this woman disagrees that the evaluations should be tossed, and says that some evaluators are good and some are not good. And then Hevesy chimes in and said, well, some legislators are good and some are not good. And then I said, well, some judges are good and not good. And she said we need a mechanism. This is what I liked. This is why I liked her. Because she said we need a mechanism to report judges. There is also retaliation and bias. Well, you know what? We can make complaints. I guess they can't make reports if they're working with them because of retaliation and bias. But as a litigant, you have, as a parent, you have what they call, that there's the process, there's ways to redress something. There's appellate court, superior court, which is all bull crap. They keep you in the runarounds and I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying they don't make redress really easy. Remedies, right? Remedies. So that means you have to fix something that they broke. That's what a remedy is. Is there a statute that says that they need to weigh in if that there's a conviction? They did talk about statutes and strengthening statutes and what if there's a conviction and the courts having some kind of communication, like if there's a parent with a conviction, that should be able to weigh in or so. I don't know. I just didn't get the very last 5 minutes of it. I have to re-listen to it. But anyway, yeah, the whole thing is they know that there's inherent problems in the system, period. They're looking for input. They're not getting input. They picked these people to speak. They picked these 5 people. That's it. Only 2 hours. And yet they put out an email for all interested parents who want to speak for 5 minutes. 5 people spoke for 2 hours. Now, they spoke 5 minutes, but then they got a lot of questions asked. So that's when they're allowed to do whatever they want on the clock. So it's kind of crazy. It's really, really crazy. I want to say something to them. I'm definitely posting this. I'm going to post this on YouTube. I'm tagging them, posting it on Facebook. And I'm also going to put together my video, because the link, you can go to the link, NYSassembly.gov. Don't go to New York Gov because you won't find the videos, but NYSassembly.gov. October 24, 2019, you would find the public hearing for the rights of children in court. They didn't say much about CPS at all in the games that they play. and their qualities and qualifications at all. And then at the end, when the last person went, when she said there's talking about accountability, I put on my shirt, and this is my shirt. It says Family Court Justice Legurcio for prison, because she does belong in prison. She defended what the doctors did to me. She defended what CPS did to me. She defended, she was biased. What can I say? She's a career judge. And so we need limits, definitely, for judges. We need limits, term limits for Congress people too. I think that's where a lot of it comes in, because it becomes careers and they become part of the mob. It's all a game. It's a system. It's a mob. So you might think that they're getting better at it because they're at it longer, but they're also getting more ingrained. They're like hardened criminals. They're hardened judges. They're hardened assemblymen, but they know the game and they smile and they were asking good questions and they were skirting the bigger picture. And when you talk to the young interns that are working with them, they're genuinely interested and they genuinely see a problem, but they don't know the bigger problem. So the bigger problem is we need to get rid of family court. We need to get rid of child protective services, because we have ways to deal with criminals. It's called criminal court with a jury. Family court has no jury. The judge is the jury. The judge looks and sees what they want to see. And if they're biased, then you're all in trouble, and they're all biased. They all have their game. They all have game on. Okay, the second thing, the standard of evidence. Hearsay is admissible evidence. Hearsay. Now, you have a person here a mother here whose ex-husband, deceased ex-husband, I don't even know what you want to call him. He commits murder. He kills their daughter. But before that, he had a history. It was documented history. That should have been qualifiable. Okay. So I agree, domestic violence, I think they muddy it by the term. I think they really need to say, are they fit, willing, and able? Then the other thing is too, so the standard of hearsay, they lie. So CPS has impunity, the judges have impunity. Oh yeah, they don't get in trouble for lying on a stand. Yeah, they're not supposed to, and they could get in trouble, but they usually don't, because of favoritism by the higher courts and protecting them, because it's a game. And the other thing is that the courts are closed. They give gag orders. They don't allow you to record or film. I think that we need cameras, and we should be allowed to bring our own cameras in all courtrooms, as well as operating rooms, because they have cameras in prisons. They have cameras on body cams on cops. They have dash cams on cop cars, because when somebody is under perfect timing, cop cars, because when somebody is under the authority of somebody powerful over them and they're under their custody, there should be some kind of a way to keep them accountable for your safety, whether it be in court and the abuse that they do to you in court, whether it be in the operating room, like what happens to me. I just found that I have surgical clips that I never knew I had, but I also know that they did stuff to me because I recorded it secretly. So that's why I say AV recording in all of these capacities, where you are overtaken by somebody more powerful than you and you are under their control. You need to be able to hold them accountable for treating you properly and fairly. That's a civil right. And the other thing is, that you shouldn't have to be brought to these courts. CPS should be investigating, not interrogating, as if you were brought in because you're guilty for something. Like, they should do proper investigation first. And they don't have qualified investigators at all. In fact, they'll take things and use things against you. They put me on the stand and used me against myself. They forced me to be a witness against myself so they could try to trap me. It's entrapment. And and then the judge didn't let me finish my defense. That's only the beginning of it. I'm going to be making videos with me, but it's going to be a while. So anyway, that was what happened. I recommend that, again, people go to these things. If you're not going to picket in front, like I was going to picket in front, but I really wanted to see what their game was because I haven't been to a New York State Assembly meeting yet. And now I know their game. And so, next time I'll picket if they don't let me speak. So, there you go.